The Philippines is a rather tolerant country when it comes to lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders, or the LGBT community. However, discrimination against them is still very rampant, especially in the workforce and in schools.
I have a friend applying for a work dahil nga sa kanyang kasarian o sa kanyang gender identity, hindi siya nabigyan ng importansya o pagpapahalaga sapagkat siya daw ay isang kakaiba.
Though there have been several bills submitted in the lower and upper houses, these have still yet to reach the committee level.
We have been lobbying for quite so long now to push for a national legislation that would afford LGBT people protection and that they will be safeguarded against discrimination. And nakikita natin na the national lobby is not really going that fast as we expected it to be. So what we did was we shifted the national lobby to local lobby kasi mas nakikita natin na if we start from the grassroots and if we involve people down the line in the community, then we gain mainstream support.
Several provinces and cities have passed city ordinances recognizing, respecting, and protecting the rights of the LGBT communities. But not everyone is aware that there are established laws doing so.
Marami sa ating mga kapatid ang hindi alam kung ano ang kanilang karapatan. Pati po sa ating mga legal officers, some of them ay hindi aware. Meron ng mga batas na nagawa, ngunit hindi ito kilala sapagkat sa mga kadahilan ng nahihiya ang ating mga kasama or minsan naman ay nare-reject at nadi-discriminate nga.
The LGBT community, along with their partners in the civil society groups, agree that the country should be made aware of the rights of the LGBTs and that these rights should be recognized and protected. The passage of city ordinances is just a start to squash discriminatory acts experienced by all.
It's not so much about me experiencing discrimination. It's about my sisters and brothers in the community who were discriminated against in the province. No? Hindi lang personal na karanasan ng discrimination, kundi yung mga close sa akin at yung mga tao rin sa komunidad ko na pinanggalingan ko na nakaranas ng ganitong discrimination.
What are the rights of the LGBT community? What are the proponents of these city ordinances? And how can these be translated and applied on a national level? Good evening. You're watching Legal Help Desk. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Jimeno.
I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will be discussing your legal rights as a member of the LGBT community. That's the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. We'll especially discuss the anti-discrimination ordinances that have been passed in several cities and provinces around the country.
Our guest for tonight is Attorney Jazz Tamayo, Vice President of Rainbow Rights Philippines. Good evening and thank you for being with us tonight, Jazz.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Attorney Jazz.
Yes.
Perhaps you can start with your organization, Rainbow Rights Philippines. Maybe you
Yes.
can give us a little bit of a background on what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. We're an NGO that's mainly focused on LGBT rights and on the legal side. No, we do paralegal trainings for both members of the LGBT community and some government agency on gender sensitivity when it comes to LGBT concerns and issues. So occasionally we're also asked for legal opinion and maybe some legal help or advice when it comes to LGBT matters.
Now, when we're talking about LGBTs, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgenders,
Yes.
Basically they're all Filipino citizens or even non-Filipino citizens. We have provisions on human rights and
Yes.
all our laws apply to every person in the Philippines. So why is there a need to even specialize, have special ordinances and lobby for a national law that
Yes.
specializes on LGBTs?
Yes, that's a very good question. Actually, it's mainly because of the experiences on the ground. No, there are a lot of discrimination that the LGBT community experience, from family to education to work, that's not recognized because the law doesn't see it as a discrimination itself just yet. So maybe just one quick example, for example, the promotion for LGBT members in the community. Some companies would tend to promote straight people under the assumption that LGBTs don't have families or dependents anyway. So maybe let's prioritize na lang someone who has family, like you're single, you don't have dependents. So maybe
So you've had experiences?
yes, there are
in
experiences
cases
like that. So that's just one. No, there are many things like in healthcare, in access to education.
But Attorney Jazz,
Yes.
even for labor rights, aren't there currently provisions which would prohibit employers from discriminating promotion, based on promotion, benefits, based on marriage or the status of the employee?
Yes, definitely. But of course, that would only apply to bisexual women or women. So for gays and transgenders, that's a different story altogether. In fact, the discrimination begins in the hiring process, the pre-employment. Like there would be instances where they would see that the person looks feminine, and from the point of view of the hiring person, the person might be a trans woman, and the paper says masculine. Reflects a masculine name. So sometimes it's even used as a ruse, no, not to hire the person despite the qualifications being present. If you use the Magna Carta of women for a trans woman, she might not be able to use that because the biology is still the sort of basis, no? He is a man, even though she is really a woman, as a trans woman already.
Now, I know internationally, I mean, there was a survey conducted among, I think, 39 countries, and the Philippines actually ranked number 10 in terms of the level of tolerance when it comes to gays and homosexuals
And
and all
this
that.
is 10 out of
10
all
out
the
of-
countries in the whole world?
Surveyed 39. I think they surveyed
Okay.
39
Yes.
countries, and the Philippines came out as number 10 as being the most gay-friendly country. So why still the need? No? I mean, I think that's a positive thing.
Yes, yes,
for sure.
definitely.
Why still the need for this kind of laws and ordinances?
Okay, yes, that's very true. No, in fact, unlike other countries, we don't have the anti-sodomy laws, no, that criminalizes being an LGBT, no, the way it is in other countries. However, in the ground, no, among the LGBT community, there really is stark still, no. It's not because we are on TV and portrayed, as happy or that we are on TV, that's enough. In the ground, there's a lot more, and it starts in the family. For example, there are some instances, no, although very rare, the corrective rapes that happen to lesbian women, where their own fathers and relatives would order that because the presumption is once you experience the sexual experience with a man, that maybe you would change.
Yeah, sorry,
So-
but did I hear you correctly? These are actual cases that
Yes, there
you've
are.
handled or aware
And
of.
Yes, we're
Their own dads, their own family
Relatives, no? It
members would
happens.
order the rape of their lesbian family
yes,
members.
under the presumption that it will correct them. No, the correct behavior is the other side of the fence. And of course, this is an extreme example,
Yes,
but
yeah.
there are very, very nuanced, like access to public services. It's also an issue, no? Just being judged from the way you look,
Yeah.
your sexual expression, even if you're not even LGBT, just perceived LGBT.
But again, Attorney Jazz, for instance, that example of having your own family member order rape to be done to you, or as you say,
to a
conducted,
daughter,
but that would have been covered by our rape law. But do you find that that is not sufficient in terms of addressing these types of issues?
Actually, one of the byproduct we're trying to achieve, by creating this ordinance is to create an awareness that there is a stigma, and that the stigma is where all the violation starts. So if there are ordinances and laws that tell people that it's wrong to do that, then it's helped. The awareness building is helped.
It's not tucked in
It's
one
not just that.
generic law, but rather it's a very
Yes,
specific
and for
law saying,
people to realize that it's not just disciplining your children. No, it's not that, because some parents would say we're just trying to discipline our child because it's wrong, the behavior is wrong. But human rights tell us that it's not wrong. They're just different from you, but they're not wrong or abnormal. I mean, it's no longer part of the mental illness definition being an LGBT.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Before- yeah, sorry, go ahead.
since you've given us some specific examples, like
Yes.
hate crimes such as ordering rape, or even discrimination in the hiring or employment
Yeah, and
of
healthcare,
LGBTs.
education also.
Can you give us the highlights of the ordinances?
Okay, yes. So I think maybe the one thing that that ties everyone together is when it comes to the employment, all of them prohibit discrimination in promotion, giving incentives and benefits.
And even hiring, I guess.
Hiring
as
is clearer with other ordinance, but a bit unclear with Quezon City and Candon.
I see.
So based on the talks with the legal practitioners, they are looking at test cases in order to really test the strength of the provisions. But the other ordinances are very clear that hiring is covered.
Okay.
That's
Well, I'm curious to hear what the other
Yes.
highlights are of these ordinances, and we'll do that after this break. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. You're still watching Legal Help Desk with our guest, Attorney Jazz Tamayo. So earlier we were talking about highlights of these ordinances,
Yes.
giving more rights to LGBTs. You mentioned for employment. What
Yes.
other highlights are there?
Well, of course, education is one of them. All of the ordinances really prohibit discrimination in the acceptance, the applying process, and the retention, as a student remains in their institution. If the discrimination is based on SOGI, or what we call sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, then that's prohibited in the ordinances. And I think what's important to note here is that Candon has a little bit of a nuance, that they cover also instances when the discrimination happens because of the relative of the student. If the relative, because of the SOGI of the relative or the parent, and that they got
if
discriminated.
you have parents, for instance, that are
Say lesbian
both
couple,
males, yeah,
yes. So if the child wasn't accepted in those institutions inside of Candon, the ordinance may be used just because if the parents
So-
are LGBTs.
Essentially, the ordinances will prevent a school from discriminating against perhaps a child
Yes.
in a lesbian home.
Yes.
So in other words, there should be no rule that prevents this child
From accessing
from
education.
All right.
It shouldn't
And
be
this
the reason. Not, of
applies-
course,
oh,
yes.
go ahead, yeah.
But of course, they have qualifications. Like if it's a grade issue that has nothing to do with their SOGI or their sexual orientation and gender identity, the ordinance won't apply. But if the reason for the dismissal or for the difference in treatment or the failure to accept is because of the SOGI of the child or of the parent or any representative of the child, in Candon, that will be prohibited.
Attorney Jazz, I was going to ask, does
Yes.
this apply to private schools as well?
Yes. In the ordinances, they're quite clear that it applies to even the private, for as long as they are in the city where the ordinances are in place.
Because I am aware of some Catholic schools, all boys schools, all girls schools, and
Yes.
there would be some pushback from the
Yes.
school or even the parents of the other students that send their
Yes,
the kids there,
understandable, yes.
that it would be against their religious beliefs.
Yes,
or,
academic freedom.
Yes, so how does that
Yes, we are cognizant of the possibility that there would be a conflict, a tangent. If you talk to the legal practitioners and the advocates, of course they say the ordinance stands and let's test the case, and we'll see how the argument goes. But on its face, if you talk to the advocates or the people who drafted the ordinance, it's quite clear to them that it will really apply to all of the schools in their own jurisdiction.
I see. Now, what are the other ordinances? So we've talked about employment, and then there's education. What are the other ordinances that we can highlight?
Yes, there's also the same with everyone is the public vilification or ridicule, in the streets and stuff. So the ordinances recognize that this happens all the time. Of course, it's very hard to prove, that this really happens, and you really have to establish a link between what was said and what offended the person, and if it had anything to do with the SOGI of the person. So that's also covered in many of the ordinances, and
what
it
types
covers.
of penalties are they facing?
Well, usually ordinance level. So we're talking about 1,000 to 5,000 max. Some imprisonment up to, I think, 1 month. The ordinances also differ as to the penalties. Some consider first offense, second offense, third offense. In some instances, no. In other ordinances, it's very clear if actually everyone, individuals and juridical identities, juridical companies are also covered. The only difference is in some ordinances, it's not clear who will be penalized if a company is the perpetrator. In other ordinances, it's clear that it's the head or the president who will be
Why are
liable.
there differences in the ordinances? Perhaps our viewers might be asking, why the differences in the ordinances? Because, well, the reason we ask is that
Yes.
obviously, if you're working in one area,
Yes.
working in one area, but you live in another area,
Yes,
and the
yes.
ordinances and the rules are different. How
Yes.
does that work
baka
out?
malito ka na.
Yeah.
Parang
Definitely.
you're thinking, ano ulit yung bawal if I'm
Yeah.
here and then if I'm
Yes.
there? Yeah.
Yeah, that's really that's the problem with differing ordinances. That's why it would be nice if the national law will be passed so that's uniform. The differences mainly is because depends on the advocates in the ground and definitely the composition and the dynamic of the council. There will be provisions that the council is more comfortable with. Say in Quezon City, they have provisions on the bathroom, and same with Angeles also has a provision with the bathroom, but it didn't pass in other councils.
Can we elaborate?
Yeah, since
Sure.
you mentioned that
Yeah.
already, that's a very interesting provision. What are
Yes.
these bathroom
Because that's an
provisions?
everyday. This is an everyday practical thing.
And
right?
if you're
So-
going to a toilet in Quezon City Road, this might be something you should be aware of.
Yeah.
di ba?
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So I think for Angeles, what they created is rainbow. They have rainbow signs on certain bathrooms.
Okay.
That's where the transgenders can use the bathroom or LGBT can use it. And they actually provide very specifically in their ordinance that the first option is to use whichever a transgender person would want to use. That's the first premise. The second is they have rainbow signed bathrooms.
Bathrooms, okay.
Now, in terms of implementation, that's still a little bit hazy.
Yeah.
Because we've talked to the people on the ground in Angeles and they feel like they would still have to negotiate it with the business, sector to really make this happen. But it's explicit in the ordinance. For Quezon City, it's clear that they want an all-gender CR to be designated.
Okay.
All right. Now we have some questions, Attorney Jazz. Hope
Sure.
we can shed some light on these questions. No? We have a viewer named Demi, and she asks, while eating out with my gay friends, the restaurant manager came up to us and told us that some of their customers were uncomfortable with our presence and asked if it was possible for us to leave. Is this a form of discrimination? Can I demand for compensation from the restaurant? Can I file a case against the restaurant?
Okay.
Right.
If we're talking about the ordinances cover instances where public services or private services are denied because of on the basis of SOGI, or even accommodation, by the way, like a hotel gives
Yeah.
you an accommodation that won't give you or gives you a lesser value. That's also considered as discrimination. Yes, the ordinances would cover this particular instance because they are being deprived of a private service just because of their identities. No? So that would be covered. In the absence, however, of an ordinance, if this instance happens in a city that's that's not there, I believe we can file under the Articles of Civil Code on Human Relations, or this is
damages, they can
damages
get
for an obligation, a contract between the consumer and the owner. But it would be nice if there's an ordinance because it's very clear. You can just say, I was deprived
And
of
it
service.
makes it easier to file
Makes
that
it
case.
easier to do that.
And if ever they do, where can they file? Should they file in the should they go to City Hall and file a complaint? Or?
Since this is an ordinance, all of the ordinances, the 6 at least that we're discussing today, they provide for the first level. It's barangay, It needs to be exhausted first. In the other cities, they created the conciliation and mediation board that are empowered to take on complaints also and to call people to summon them for a possible conciliation.
That's wonderful. At least it makes it easier to file a
Yes,
case.
so it's barangay level first.
Okay, we have another question from Matthew. I was born female, but I'm now a complete male and would want all of my legal documents to say so. How can I do this? Will it be illegal for me to be recognized as a male instead of a female? This goes into a national law, no, Attorney
Yes.
Jazz?
Unfortunately, the answer to that question is that, he's born female.
Yes,
Born
and now
female.
he calls herself or himself Matthew because
Trans
that's
man.
how he
So
sent his
he's a
question.
trans man. So in that case, he's because there is no law yet that allows to change the status. So definitely he can't amend his public records just yet. Of course, it breeds a lot of problems. Most of our members in the community are transgendered. Really have this a problem. Like when they travel, they really get harassed. They are detained in immigration places just because of their documents being contrary to what they look like. So
And
it's
that's
really
understandable,
difficult.
Rod. It's like
Yeah.
you're stealing someone else's identity or legal
Fraud.
documents. Because,
Right.
for instance, Matthew sent us this question, but if his name appears as like Mary or a female, it would be really weird. No?
But
if
also
you're-
we have to point out that in some of these cases, they are profiled as sex workers, as if trans women are only sex workers, as if they travel simply because of sex work, not as if they can't afford to travel for leisure or
Yeah.
for other things.
Okay.
All right.
So I suppose this is an area that would need lobbying in terms
Yes.
of amendment as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Attorney Jazz. We'll have other questions, but for now, we'll take another short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these reminders. You're still watching Legal Help Desk with our guest, Attorney Jazz Tamayo.
All right. Let's talk about specific, let's say, crimes. No? Kasi people have a tendency to think that if you do or commit certain, let's say, gay acts with another person, is it a crime? Kasi you mentioned earlier sodomy laws, no, in other countries.
Yes.
But here, let's just clarify it once and for all. Acts between, let's say, a male and another male done privately, there's no crime committed there?
Yes, yes. There's no crime committed there if it's done privately, of course, and it's consensual. No violence or duress involved.
And
So
I guess
yes,
age is also important.
of course,
The
no.
age
If
is
the
also
other person
important.
is not a minor.
Now, if you do this publicly, is there any kind of, let's say, crime that can be imputed with that?
Well, what's being used, of course, is public scandal no, against them. Or if it's done in some places, is obscenity. These are the crimes that are usually filed. For lesbians, it's mostly kidnapping. If they go elope with their partners and the family wants to get back the other person, even if the eloping was actually consensual, just because there's really nothing in the law that they can use. So sometimes these provisions are used against LGBTs.
And do you find that they prevail?
Well, in one case, it happened, it did not. Because the police discovered that it was actually just a lesbian relationship that was consensual, and they were called into it with kidnapping because the parents pretended like their child was kidnapped, but actually it was not. So,
Well, Attorney Jazz, what about other provisions like seduction? So if you have two people in a relationship that are of the same sex
Yes.
and the other person is a minor, do you find that there are cases of,
This
for
case,
instance,
it's
seduction
never-
filed against them?
If not fall under seduction, right? Because
Yeah, because I
Yes.
think
It's
the
usually a
laws are
man.
very specific. It has to be a
man.
male and
Yes.
then an underage female.
yeah, but in the VAUC laws apply to lesbian relationships.
all right.
Because you have
So-
women victims.
Yes, so because the VAUC, the anti-VAUC covers relationships, it covers even same-sex woman-to-woman relationships. So a lesbian may be a perpetrator under the VAUC. It's possible.
Is it safe to say then that the discrimination perhaps would be on the male, the gay men? Because they, unlike the women who are gay, they still get some kind of protection with the VAUC, right?
Well, yeah, or the Magna Carta
or the
of
Magna
women,
Magna
like
Carta of
if you're a
women.
bisexual woman.
Yeah, so it's the
more
gay
of a
men
prob-
that really have
and the
kind of a
trans women, because it's still, we as an advocate, we want them to be able to get the same rights as women, because for us they are women. So, but of course, when it comes, we talk to the government, it's a bit hazy, like whether they can really claim the rights under the Magna Carta of women.
And can they be charged, let's say, falsification of document if they say they put their female, but they're actually
For
born
public
male?
documents, yes, no,
They
that-
can be charged?
Well, it
Yes,
is-
because
it's
that's not
falsification.
allowed, right? You
Yes,
have
it is
to indicate your
falsification
correct gender from your birth.
Yes. So unless, of course, the document just requires a nickname. I mean, they can use whatever name they want as a nickname,
Correct.
but as a full name, yes. I think it's also very important to note now the ordinances mostly deal with accesses to rights and services, no? But in terms of the crimes, it's not covered, maybe except the GUPAN, who made a very explicit mention that infliction of crime on the basis of SOGI is penalized under their ordinance. It's like their own version of a little bit of a hate crime provision, because as of yet, there's no hate crime law in the country.
And to clarify, SOGI means sexual orientation.
Orientation, gender identity, and expression.
Now, you mentioned earlier that there's some, let's say, transgender men, let's say, who look like women, and they kind of, let's say, ply some certain roads.
Yes.
And I think the presumption is sometimes they're selling sexual favors.
Yes.
Now, in such a case, can can someone file a case against them, or if so, what is that? What is that crime?
Yes.
Or are they committing a crime just because they're walking there and I guess parading themselves, and sometimes they would entertain. And the reason why I ask this is obviously they're not under the law. They won't fall under prostitution under the prostitution
revised
law.
penal code,
Yeah,
of
the
course
RPC
not,
on,
yes.
on prostitution. So what are, I guess, from a standpoint lang of clarity,
Yes.
where does that stand?
Well, from an advocate perspective, no, if they're the ones who are supposedly the prostitute in this transaction, the trend of the law is really to protect, no, the victims with human trafficking. So they wouldn't really be liable because they are supposedly the victims as a sex worker. Of course, in the advocacy world, there's a big debate about sex work, like what is right, what is wrong, and I'm not at liberty to to say my side on the story.
Of course, yeah. At least from an advocacy
From an
standpoint.
advocacy perspective, they are the ones that will be protected by the law in this case under the human trafficking provisions.
So in a way, those people, they're not committing any crime by doing what they do when they walk the streets, and they're not committing any
If the
crime.
spirit of the law is to be believed that they are victims in this particular transaction.
All right. We still have a couple of questions from our viewers. Jimmy sent this question. My son is a victim of bullying in school. This is a good point. His classmates teased and tormented him endlessly for being gay. It has come to the point where they don't allow him to enter the male comfort room. Can I demand the school to have more proactive and reactive measures to protect students like my son? Itong bullying na to, this is the one
Yes,
that we're talking
yes.
about, diba?
And
There's
interestingly,
already an
Attorney-
anti-bullying
Yes.
act, so that applies, no, already. I think what's a very good thing to mention is in the Quezon City Ordinance, they even expanded this to include bullying by principals and teachers. Because in reality, bullying doesn't just happen peer to peer. Sometimes it's teachers imposing their values on the students. Like, you're wrong, you're gay. So you have to, check yourself and correct yourself. So this is actually bullying also by people in authority inside the institution. The bullying in the national law only covers student to students. So the Quezon City expanded theirs. So at least institutions in Quezon City would cover that.
But specifically, the ordinances no longer contain provisions relating to bullying because there's the anti-bullying law.
No, it's still part of it because any discrimination, they're not very specific that this is, so any kind of discrimination. QC also includes instances where they are thrown out of organizations inside. They might not be expelled from the school, but if because of SOGI, they are taken out of their organization, that also counts as a prohibited act in their ordinance.
The reason I ask is that if you're a parent, such as our viewer asking this question,
Yes.
she has the choice of either applying the anti-bullying law
Yes.
or the ordinance
The
in
ordinance.
that specific.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they may. If the teacher is involved, it would be nice if it's in QC.
Yes,
So they
yes.
can use
Yes,
that.
but if it's student to student, then the parent can just file a complaint under the
The
anti-bullying
national law, yes.
Our next question is from Tony. I'm a trans woman. I applied for a job position and the interviewer noted that my records indicated that I was a male. He then continued to ask my gender, and I had to explain to him that I was in transmission to becoming a woman. I was then told that their company will not hire people like me for fear of their company being ridiculed. Even though I had all the qualifications, they can't hire me. Can I file a case of discrimination against this company? What law can I use to support my case?
Yes, definitely. If it happens in the cities where the ordinances are, with the exception of Candon and Quezon City, which is a bit more test case level, she can use the ordinance against the employer because it covers pre-employment stage. And if that's the exact situation, no, that she was even asked about her gender and that she had to explain that she was transitioning, and that's the reason why they denied her application,
Because
then it's a clear
they would
case.
be ridiculed according to the boss or the
Yes.
HR head. They would be
Yes.
ridiculed. So again, for clarity, which are the cities and provinces that
Covered here.
that are ordinances?
Yes, there are 10. No, the ones covered in our handbook are the QC, Candon, Dagupan, Davao, Angeles City, and Agusan del Norte. So those 6. There are others that are not covered: Cavite, Cebu, Vigan, which recently passed its own, and Bacolod.
Those are additional cities that
Yes.
will be having
That
ordinances.
have already. They have. There are 10 already in the country at the moment.
But sadly, no, I didn't hear Makati or Taguig, which are very big cities in the Philippines. So
Yes.
presumably they have a lot of people working in those cities.
Yes.
They really need
I'd like to
ordinance
believe there are
this.
moves already. Like Mandaluyong has begun its own move. I think CDO also would want to. It's really it's a mix. Like there has to be these cities are blessed because they have local government empowerment, and at the same time their advocates on the ground are very staunch about it. So they decided to work together, and hence
Now,
these ordinances.
a lot of our viewers are probably asking, why ordinances in specific cities? Why not make a national law na lang to institutionalize
Yes.
and establish all of these laws and make it equal for all cities and provinces?
Yes, that's the wish of everyone, no? Whether advocates or also local government. For implementation purposes, it's even easier, uniform. However, the anti-discrimination bill has been in Congress for 15 years now. And we would like to think that it might pass soon, but while waiting, the advocates believe that we can't wait for rights to be recognized. So it's best to have small triumphant successes in many cities. At least some jurisdictions are there. And anyway, the discourse about the ordinances opens up awareness in itself. So that's also a success, no? And more of the cities would follow suit, and that's even better than none at all.
And just to clarify, Attorney Jazz, when
Yes.
we're talking about lobbying for these ordinances and a national law,
Yes.
can you clarify whether you're also advocating for family code rights like same-sex marriages?
Civil unions, for example.
Well, it's mostly, no, at least on our side of the advocacy, it's not just the marriage itself, no, that some people have issues with or that would want to get. It's more of the automatic rights that come inside a marriage. That's more of an issue. Like say property rights, no, that's automatic. The next of kin status is automatic when you are allowed to be married. So it's not just the celebration, it's not to insult anyone, it's mostly the rights that come with the marriage. Of course, the community, even the community, no, since basic masyado, no, basic rights are the ones that are really being pushed. This second tier, no, when it comes to marriage, becomes a wish. Now that's added.
Yeah.
But the clamor really is for basic rights and protection against violence and discrimination.
Now, the current law, obviously, we know the current law. Essentially, our marriage laws only require male and female.
Yes, by
now
the definition of marriage itself,
Yes.
it's very clear.
We'd have to say goodbye for now,
Yes.
but I
Yes.
hope
But-
that the next time we see you, you have more good news of more ordinances or maybe this
The national law.
bill that has been planned,
Yes.
well,
Yes.
has been pending in Congress for
Yeah.
15 years.
Hopefully, we can guest you
We'll
again
move
so we
forward.
can clarify more issues and perhaps, give an update on what is the status of the ordinances. Perhaps
Yes.
there'll be more cities and more provinces, perhaps a country.
Thank
will
you
be
for having
supporting
us also and for giving us a chance to show you what we've done with the help of Canada Fund
It's our
and all
pleasure,
of the
yeah.
other advocates.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Jazz Tamayo,
Thank you.
Vice President of Rainbow Rights Philippines, for being with us tonight. Legal Help Desk will return, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk. Tonight,
right.
we discussed the rights of
The
gays,
yeah.
LGBTs, so
Yeah.
lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders.
Yes, and there are movements now, at least from in terms of legislation in the local level, no, maybe the cities and municipalities, specifically in Davao, Quezon City, Candon City, Vigan, Dagupan, and Agusan del Norte provinces. There are ordinances now, as we discussed earlier, that give certain rights and concessions for lesbians, gays, bisexual, and transgenders, allowing them to avoid discrimination in specific instances. For example, when it comes to employment, when it comes to restrooms, the establishment of restrooms, and also when it comes to labor laws and education, access to education.
And I hope that's something that our viewers can learn from tonight's episode, that acronym LGBT, better get used to it. Lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders. And take note of the cities that Rod mentioned, because they are cities that already have specific ordinances that give more rights to LGBTs, or basically give them the basic rights of not being discriminated, especially when it comes to being hired for employment or treated in schools or in public. Basically, it also penalizes public ridicule. And just as a helpful reference, Rainbow Rights Philippines has a guidebook on the different provisions
Yeah,
of all those ordinances. But at the same time, Rainbow Rights Philippines, they're also lobbying for national laws, a national law that will apply to all the LGBTs in the Philippines, so that, again, they are not discriminated and their rights are respected. But please take note that this does not include same-sex marriages. And if the couple is Filipino, then they cannot really be legally married in the Philippines. Even if they get married abroad, that marriage cannot be recognized here, meaning all the rights that come from marriage, yung property rights, yung anak nyo, whether the children that you adopt will be legitimate, will not apply.
And remember, if you're in establishments, for example, establishments in Quezon City or Davao or Canton City, if you're discriminated on in a restaurant because of your sexual orientation or your sexual preference, then or your sexual identity, you can file a complaint. No? Maybe the barangay, first at the barangay level, you can file a complaint, and the owner of the establishment can actually get penalized through fines and even possibly imprisonment, no? Based on what is indicated in the ordinance. All right. So, important thing to remember is that LGBT, the members of the LGBT community, are human. They're Filipino, and we have to treat them well and with respect. They're no different from us. All right. Now, over the week, we have received some questions from our viewers on topics we have previously discussed. Grace posted on our Facebook page, "I'm a green card holder, and I'm staying here in the Philippines for 20 years now. I have a daughter who is a U.S. citizen, and she has been residing in the U.S. for 15 years. She wants me to go back to the U.S. along with my husband and her siblings that are under 21 years old. What steps can I do?"
Okay. Well, you can go back to the U.S. without question because you have a green card. And for your daughter who's an American citizen living in the U.S., no problem on that part as well. Now, the question is, are your children, especially the ones that she mentioned that are under 21 years old, are they also American citizens? If not, then your daughter, who's an American citizen, can file a petition. They can be petitioned to be American citizens so that they can go to the U.S. with you, not just as tourists, but also as basically immigrants if your decision is basically to move everyone to the U.S.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Our next question is from Ashton. "I was born in the Philippines, but I am an American citizen. On my birth certificate, my Filipino father claimed he was an American citizen. He joined the American Air Force. I tried filing for dual citizenship, but I was told my father needs to be a dual citizen for me to file for dual. But he passed away. How can I file for dual citizenship given my situation?" Well, in the first place, your filing for a dual citizenship does not depend on your father having dual citizenship. It really depends on your status.
Yeah. Now, the usual scenario here for you to apply for dual citizenship is that you're Filipino, you're born Filipino, then you get naturalized in another country, then you come back here and reacquire Filipino citizenship. Because when you get naturalized, you lose your Filipino citizenship. But then the law now recognizes that a lot of Filipinos leave because they need it because of economic reasons. They don't really want to give up their Filipino citizenship. So, for example, you become naturalized in the U.S., you come back, and you reacquire Filipino citizenship. So now you're both Filipino and American. But in your case, I have to qualify our answer because it's not clear whether you claimed you're an American citizen, but we're not sure if you got your citizenship by way of naturalization. If you're saying you were American from the very beginning, then you can't apply for dual citizenship. You have to go through the process of acquiring Filipino citizenship.
Yeah, basically what Rod is saying is that if you were an American from the start, what you file is a petition for acquisition of Philippine citizenship. And then you have to check with your immigration lawyers in the U.S. how you can retain your American citizenship if you do that. But then if you were Filipino from the start and then became an American citizen, then what you have to file is a petition for reacquisition of Philippine citizenship.
All right. All right, so our last recap question is from Oncar, and I'm a foreign national with foreign parents and residing here as a permanent resident under RA 7919. How can I gain Filipino nationality? All right.
Well, in this case, there are two options.
Two ways.
Either you file a petition in court or you file an administrative case with the Office of the Solicitor General.
Yeah.
And in this case, Rod, I think he
It
has
would be
to
the
go
court.
to court.
Have to be
Yes.
to court because for the OSG, for the administrative one, it applies to people who were born here, let's say of Chinese descent, and they were born here. They were born of Chinese parents, but they were born here. So they were really not Filipinos to begin with, but they grew up here. They got educated here. They know how to speak Tagalog. Those type of citizens, those type of people, they're the ones who can apply administratively sa OSG, no? Office of the Solicitor
And just to
General.
clarify, Rod is not saying that you have to be born of Chinese parents.
Yeah,
Those were basically, if you remember our previous episode on immigration, the common scenario was basically of the Filipino Chinese who have been here for several years and yet they are not Filipino citizens. But what's important is that you comply with the requirements, the number of years that you've been living here, that you speak at least one of the Filipino dialects,
yes.
and that you comply with the requirements in order to file for the faster process of filing for that petition in the Office of the Solicitor General instead of the court.
All right. All right, so that's all the time that we have for tonight. We would like to thank our viewers for sending their questions on our social media pages. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you have any questions about our topic for tonight, you may send these on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.